the zookeepers here at Adelaide Zoo. Today I'm looking after the meerkat among a few other species in my day, but I've got a little group of 5 meerkats here that are pretty keen for some lunch. So I'm just going to scatter feed some vegetables, nice healthy freshly chopped veg for them. They sometimes play with it a bit. For the most part they will chop up their favourite bits first and then they'll clean up whatever's left. They do have quite the vigorous appetite, these guys. So as I said, there's 5 meerkats in here. We have 1 female and 4 males. Now, it's unusual, I'm sure you've spotted her, but she is the only girl. Miss Snow White is our white meerkat. She's looking particularly clean today. Sometimes she gets a little bit of an orange tinge to her when she does a lot of digging, which these guys tend to do. Now, Snow White, she is 10 years old now, and meerkats, they can live for about 10 to 12 years in captivity. That's a good lifespan for them, so she's not young, but she hasn't gone white because she's old. She's actually been white for most of her life, and when she was only a couple of years old, well, she was born here to start with, but when she was only a couple of years old, the keepers that were looking after her at the time reported to the vets that she was starting to fade. She was losing that pigment, that colour. And you can see a little bit around her face as well, that pink skin shining through, but the obvious bit is her coat is very white. It's not something that is common to occur in animals, let alone meerkats, but vets diagnosed her with a condition called vitiligo, which was their best kind of diagnosis to be able to give her interesting condition a name. In the wild, she'd be in strife if she was white, because she would stand out quite a bit. Thankfully for her, she's here in captivity, and it turns out she's the boss in this group. In a typical group of meerkats, you'll have 1 alpha male and 1 alpha female, and since she's the only girl, she gets to be the alpha female. The favourite male of hers in here is actually this boy here, just on my left. His name's Sleepy, and the way that we can tell him apart that stick out, these little front to identify. These guys, they all weigh about 1 kilo, they're all fully grown, and for food they do all kind of look the same. So we've got the more time we spend with them, we do tend to notice little differences, little changes in colours to the different faces, different shades of brown, maybe different lengths of black on their tail, wider faces, fluffier faces. So they do all have their unique features, just like humans really. So as I said, they're eating a little bit of veggies now. They also had some protein for breakfast this morning, so their meat feed this morning, they actually got a mouse each. Now we don't feed the mice out live, the mice do not feel any harm, but we do have to make sure that each meerkat gets 1 egg so that they don't have any competition. As you can see, there's some competition going on there for probably a piece of corn or pea. When they go in like that together as well and try and fight for a bit of food, you'll notice that they go back in or bum in first. And the reason for that is, if a meerkat's going to defend itself, really all it's got is its teeth, and neither of those 2 meerkats want to get nipped. So bum first is a safer approach if you're trying to win over some food. As well as the protein in their fruit and veg, these guys also love insects, and that's their main sort of diet in the wild. They will primarily eat insects. Particularly here, we will feed out mealworms. They get a feed of mealworms most days. If they're not getting mealworms, they'll eat things like crickets or cockroaches, maybe some snails. Now insects we do feed out live for these guys, which is fantastic because the insects just run around the exhibit, disappear into the mulch, and these guys really need to work to find the food. Now if you guys think of any questions as I'm telling you these different bits of information about the meerkats, feel free to post your questions and I'll be able to answer some questions as we go on as well. So as well as food, obviously enrichment is one of the most important things for animals in captivity, not just the animals here in the zoo, but your animals at home too. So enrichment for meerkats, rather than just scattering the food, we may actually hide it in cardboard boxes or amongst shredded paper or some bedding hay. We'll occasionally bring in some browse or branches For these guys that have come out of, say, the koala exhibit, so there's some unusual smells there. Enrichment is designed to stimulate the senses. It just mixes up their day, makes their day that little bit different to yesterday. These guys do a lot of digging. They dig a lot of holes. And I come in most days, well, I come in every day and rake the exhibit, and I make an effort to fill in their holes so they can start again. It's good enrichment for them. It's almost like they're finding another desert each through the base of the exhibit though, so they can't just keep digging, disappear out somewhere else in the zoo and pop up. A few meerkat exhibits here at the zoo, and typically animals in zoos have different roles. So this group in particular is their role when the zoo's open. We actually run encounters with these guys. So we'll bring up to 4 guests at a time in with an apron. So the meerkats will obviously wander all over you and just use you as their dinner plate. So it's a lot of fun. It's very popular. And of course, when the zoo reopens, we're going to be able to hopefully get some of you guys in here to meet these guys in person.
We've had a question.
Yeah.
So Christy is wondering, how many babies can they have at one time?
Christy, these guys are really good breeders. So when they are breeding, the females are only pregnant for about 9 weeks, and she will have 4 to 5 pups at the end of that. So their numbers can increase quite quickly. Mum will usually have 2 or 3 litters consecutively, and then she'll have a break until the following year. The pups are tiny. They're only sort of the size of about an adult mouse when they're first born. Very dependent on both mum and dad, and actually the whole family. The whole family work together to look after young ones.
Amelia is wondering, what does their fur feel like?
Amelia, they are actually quite soft. Yeah, we don't get to pat them or pick them up. They're not quite that friendly, which is the way we want them. They do have quite sharp teeth. If we try and touch, they may bite. And but when they're under anaesthetic, if they have to go and visit the vet for any reason, we're pretty keen to have a touch and see what they feel like then. But yeah, they are pretty soft.
A couple of people are wondering, are they noticing that there are no visitors around?
I definitely think this group has probably noticed the difference, because these encounters that we normally run are 5 days a week. So they haven't had any laps to hop up on. But again, that's where enrichment comes in for these guys. And while we would do that every day of the year anyway, finding some sort of enrichment for them, we definitely are putting an emphasis on enrichment at this time as well, which you've probably seen through some of the zoo posts as well. We're able to trial different enrichment or toys for these guys to keep them occupied while visitors aren't able to do that. Sure, they like watching people.
Amelia would like to know, what are their names? Obviously we've got Snow White, but who are the others?
Yeah, okay. So for quite a while we actually had Snow White with 7 dwarves. So we did have the dwarves. Unfortunately, Doc, Dopey and Grumpy are no longer with us. So we do still have Happy, Bashful, Sleepy and Sneezy.
A couple of people are wondering, do they climb or jump?
Yes, they do lots of climbing. So not so much up the tree here. The plastic on the tree behind me is more so to keep the possums out of the exhibit. But as far as climbing goes, they do like structures that allow them to elevate themselves and do their natural sentry duty. So they're pretty relaxed here in captivity. But in the wild, sentry duty is essential, because they're so little, they will end up as prey or food quite quickly. So they do like to elevate themselves and use that position as a sentry location so that they can keep themselves safe. As far as jumping goes, they definitely can jump. There's a couple of boys in one of our other groups that will jump about this high. Yeah, probably about this high off the ground, particularly in the mornings when they see me coming with their meat feed. They get a bit of a spring on. We do have electric fences all the way around the edge of the exhibit, so that if they decide they're going to try and jump or potentially climb up the walls of the exhibit, they are not able to do that. Because once they get out, they can run very fast.
Brittany would like to know, how long do they sleep for? Are they big sleepers?
They are pretty big sleepers. Again, they tend to come out at dawn and dusk, and that's their safer kind of time. Gives them a little bit of protection through the heat of the day as well in the wild. They're going to hide underground, and they'll do a lot of sleeping then too. Here in captivity, Yeah, they do tend to sleep quite a bit. They're pretty relaxed. They're active during feed times, definitely for encounters and enrichment times. The rest of the time they just tend to chill out. It's not unusual of a cold morning as well to find them all piled in on top of each other, having a big group hug.
Shelley would like to know, where do they live in the wild?
Yep, so in the wild, these guys are an African species, typically South Africa. They do tend to like arid plains, open areas that allows them to be able to keep a good lookout for danger. And nice sandy spaces that they can dig plenty of burrows.
How long do they live for?
Yep, so their typical lifespan in captivity is 10 to 12 years. And as I mentioned just before, these guys are all around the 10-year mark. They certainly don't act their age. In the wild, not that long, because they do have lots of prey. So you might see a 4, maybe 5-year-old meerkat, 6 if they're really fast.
7-year-old Emerson would like to know what you feed them in terms of live insects apart from mealworms.
Other than mealworms, we actually have cockroaches that we breed here, and we have an order of crickets that come to the zoo every couple of weeks as well. So crickets and cockroaches, and I particularly like when we get nice big rains and the big garden snails come out, and I'll go and collect the garden snails. The horticulture guys are pretty happy with that, collecting snails out of their garden. But I've got to make sure that I find enough that there's at least one for every meerkat. Don't want arguments.
Shelley is asking on behalf of Charlie and Ellie.
They're used to mark the territory. The other way they do it, they have glands under their neck. And we do also find in encounters, when we're running the encounters, occasionally a meerkat will take a particular liking to one of the visitors, and they nuzzle their neck up against the visitor, and we know that they like them then. They're marking their territory on the visitor. That's a nice, polite greeting.
Emma would like to know, how deep are those holes that we were talking about earlier? How deep are they before you fill them in again?
Depends how busy they've been overnight. Some of them go right down underneath the log here. You can see they've been busy underneath the log. There's also other logs in here that are hollow, so that does encourage them and allow them to be able to create burrows around the hollow holes in the logs too.
All right, this is going to be our last question from Kelly. Do they bite?
Do they bite? Yes. Yes, they do bite. They have sharp teeth. They go out of their way to... they don't go out of their way to bite. Generally, if they're nipping, it's because I'm not paying attention. Maybe I've got a piece of food that I want to hand feed them, or maybe they jump because they see the food in my hand, and they may accidentally nip. But they don't go out of... They're not aggressive animals. They don't go out of their way to bite. Thanks, guys.